So it's very important to us. Yes, we've been talking about processing. Yes, we've been talking about immersive technology. And excuse me, not just immersive technology, but it's very important to talk about advanced display technology that goes beyond immersive tech. Joining us is Bob Rakes, who's the publisher and managing editor for Meko Limited. He flew in from Europe to visit us today. Let's give Bob a round of applause.
Thanks. I do at least have age on my side. I'm a couple of years less than you. When I certainly got into displays, you could have any colour you liked as long as it was amber or green. You've got a long way from there. So I wanted to talk about immersion. And in order to immerse yourself, you've got to basically match to the human. And that's going to be the main topic. Meko does two things. We do market research on desktop monitors in Europe, which is a fascinating business. We've been there since 2000, but at least it makes money. And we also publish Display Daily. Display Daily, which is a blog. You can sign up at displaydaily.com for a dose of display goodness every day. Funny thing, we have the most subscribers. We have unsubscribing saying your emails are too frequent. Guys, it's pretty obvious, really. Anyway, today's talk, I'm going to go very, very simple. You know, I got this graphic a few years ago. Your boss always wants a simple. Well, tell me yes or no. You know, is it up or down? Of course, real life is somewhere there, but I'm going to be right up here. So everything I say today, you can argue with, and I'm happy to spend my day arguing about it. And you can qualify it. But so it's very broad brush, 50,000 foot view. And one thing I'm very fond of saying, because I often talk to rooms full of display engineers, is a display without a person has no function. And you can spend days at display technology events without anybody talking about the person that connects. In the end, it's just a communication interface. And understanding that interface is critical to making a good display. If you don't understand the person, I don't think you can understand the display. But the thing is, human perception is incredibly complex. I'm just going to do a little bit of video here. Has anybody seen the McGurk effect? Oh, good. Some virgins. So this is a bit of video I stole from the BBC, explaining the McGurk effect. And what it shows you is how your visual system can fool your ears. So I'm going to show you a guy talking, and there's one lot of audio, and if you look at him on one side, you'll hear one thing, and if you look at him on the other side, you'll hear the other thing. So I'm going to shut up a moment and let this loop run for a few seconds. When you've tried both, if you can just stick your hand up, so I don't leave it running for hours for nothing. So, okay, so the McGurk effect. Try switching from one to the other, and we're not beaming different audio to you. A few hands going up. So, that was just a kind of spoke in the wheel to say it's not that simple. You can talk about pixels, you can talk about colour gamuts, you can talk about nits, but human perception is incredibly complex. I hope I've just demonstrated that. But there are ways in which you want better displays, especially for immersion. You want something as real as possible, I think, if you want maximum immersion. So one of the things you can do is more pixels. The display guys love doing that because, especially for LCD, I haven't got time to explain it, but happy to do that afterwards. The pixels are basically free. You can have more pixels, and it doesn't really cost you anything very much. It does, but not as much as the display makers would have you believe. I get very upset that people talk about, we've got displays that are as good as 20/20 vision. Well, 20/20 vision is about 30 cycles per degree, so that means that on an image that's 10 to 1 degree on your eye, you've got 30 changes from black to white. But people have, and that's about 30 is 20/20 vision. There are plenty of people around who've got 20/10 vision, especially young people. and they've got about 60 cycles per degree. And there are plenty of people who will tell you that 60 cycles per degree is kind of the limit of human vision. But the reason that NHK chose 8K for TV was in their research, they went up to 154 cycles per degree, and they still had people reporting more realism. They weren't talking about reading an eye chart, they weren't talking about acuity, but they were talking about more realism from up to 154. And they only got up to 154 because that's where they stopped testing. Now, it wasn't that many people by that level, but there's a real lack of understanding about what the maximum resolution that the eye is capable of, or the human perception system is capable of enjoying. At the moment, you can certainly get 800 pixels per inch. The Sony Xperia had Ultra HD on a smartphone. That's about 800 pixels per inch. A writer for me, Candice Brown Elliott, who actually was the designer of the pixel layout for the Samsung smartphones, she's written articles for me on our website saying you've got to go to 1200 pixels per inch for a smartphone. But fortunately, the good news is we can do it. There's no real limit at the moment in terms of pixels per inch that's going to be a problem for the human eye, I think, in immersive applications. You also want bigger, better pixel quality, and by that I mean colour, so wider colour gamut. In colour gamuts, everything up to now has pretty well been based on Rec 709, which is based on CRTs. That specification was based around the eye, what a CRT could do. It wasn't based on any new display technology. And we basically limited to that up to now. The new one coming, Rec 2020, which again is in NHK's 8K Tokyo Olympics specification, Rec 2020 includes in the colour a set of colours called Pointer's colours, which is all the colours in the real world. A guy called Pointer went out and looked at the world and measured the colours of all the natural things. And basically, within that triangle, which is a horrible triangle, don't get me started on why it's a bad specification, but it does include all of the natural world colours. It doesn't include every colour you can see. You can generate with artificial lighting colours that are not in the natural world, but you can at least see everything in the natural world. And that would be a pretty good start for immersion if everything looked the colour it really was in real life. You can also get plenty of brightness. Micro LED, which I'll come on to in a moment, is the big new thing for displays. And really, there's no real problem to get up to 100,000 nits. And that should be bright enough for most things, I think. So there's really no limit on resolution or contrast and brightness. You also need a sense of depth. I was a real cynic about, skeptic about 3D until I have a thing called Bob's Law, Bob's second law, which came up in, if more could have a law, I thought I'd have several. And Bob's second law says anything that increases visual bandwidth wins in the end, because back in the 80s when I started, IBM's professional graphics controller, or PGA, PGC, had 64402 resolution, because you needed really high resolution for CAD. And at each stage, people using the technology have always said, for 30-something years, they've always said to me, oh, what I've got is good enough. And it never is. So there's always more needed until you match the bandwidth. In the end, this is a communication interface. So if you match the bandwidth, then you've reached the maximum. And if you don't have depth information, you're throwing away so much information and so much data about how the world works. And you're throwing away so much of how human perception has been developed and evolved over millions of years. So once I realised that, I changed it so we would have good depth. The problem is, really good depth is very hard, especially from flat display surfaces. You can fool people with an SID this year that there's some very nice virtual windows where you're used to the idea that you're looking through a window, but at sort of a distance. But it's really hard to make really good depth from a flat display because of vergence accommodation, confidence, and all sorts of human factor stuff, which again I can't get into, but there's a lot of really good work going on in that. Facebook gave a really good keynote on that in SID this year. So there's a lot of work going on, but it's really hard when the display's flat. It's even harder when the display's very close to your eye. So this is really going to be a huge challenge to get really good depth that's really comfortable with high resolution and good beautiful colour. And another occasional writer for me, Carl Guttag, if anybody ever follows his stuff, wrote a great piece for us saying there's no Santa Claus for VR and AR. Because he's been 30-something years in optics of head-mounted displays. And the optics, all of the issues, the weight, the form factors, are all going to be horrible and challenging, but we'll get there in the end. So, three key technologies: LCD, which has been around 20 years or so, OLED, which is more recent in terms of impact on the market. I've got some charts later, well, one chart anyway. And LCD was really good. I'll introduce you to the LCD monster in a moment. OLED is now becoming important, and it is really important in VR applications because OLED is challenged in terms of getting a really high brightness, but in a goggles application, you can control the amount of ambient light, so you're not trying to compete with daylight. So OLED becomes a very, very good solution. It's very thin and very light, great colour, fast, anything you like. But the one that is getting this huge amount of traction at the moment is micro LED, where you take an LED, just like the kind of LED that you use for a big LED wall, but you make it very, very small. But when I say small, Eric Viol has a lovely slide that shows the size of some of the micro LED chips that are being talked about at the moment, and it's compared with pollen and house dust. You know, we throw about these numbers, but when you compare them with real things in the real world, these are pretty tiny LEDs. But you can distribute them over an area and get really good performance. And LED can give you high brightness, it can give you fast response, wide colour, long life. There's nothing not to like about micro LED, except you can't make them. They're outrageously expensive. But apart from that, they're really good. And there's a problem for OLED, which I didn't really mention, is that there are only really two companies who are seriously producing volume OLEDs at the moment. That's LG and Samsung. And LG makes the big ones, and Samsung makes the small ones. LG literally has 100% of the large OLED market, and Samsung has 95% of the small OLED market. So that's it. And Samsung's blocked LG from making small ones, and LG stopped Samsung from making big ones, and Samsung's way of making big ones didn't work. So Samsung tried to make OLEDs for several years, invested a huge amount, and basically hit the wall in terms of technology. So they're desperately looking for micro LED because the Chinese are coming on LCD. The Chinese are absolutely coming. I was at SID in the summer. Everybody agrees we need at least 4 new fabs, big LCD fabs, to meet market demand for large TVs over the next 3 or 4 years. Chinese are probably going to build 8, and they might build 13. So I found people who'd quoted for 13. So there's going to be an awful lot of big, very cheap LCD TVs around over the next few years. So micro LED is getting a lot of attention. A lot of big companies are putting a lot of time and attention into it because it's really hard in terms of a flat display. It's really hard to think what you can do after micro LED because it's efficient, it's great visual quality. You can make it tiny. You can make the space occupied by the pixel itself, the light-emitting part, very small. Sony's claimed this big, beautiful display. If you get a chance to see it, you can buy one for only a couple $1 million. And it's really wonderful. The reason it's wonderful is that only 1% of the surface of the display is actually LED. 99% is just light absorbing black. So the contrast is fantastic. But given that 99% space, you can do all sorts of stuff. You can start to stick detectors behind in the pixel. You can do fingerprint recognition within the display. You can put cameras in with all sorts of processing to avoid the needs of lenses and things like that. So it's going to become a substrate for doing loads of stuff. It's not just a display. So you can make it flexible. You make it transparent. It lasts forever. There's nothing not to love. So micro LED, the big thing. It's just a bit tricky to put, if you're going to make an Ultra HD 4K TV, you've just got to pick up 25 million of these LEDs and stick them on a sheet of glass, join them together, and drive them. And by the way, they're very variable. It's tricky. But apart from that, we're going to be fine. So I'm going to very briefly whiz through this because I realised last night I got too much. 4 waves of the flat panel display industry, from notebooks first, killer app, you had to have a flat panel. And 20 years ago, we reported the first TFTs. You know, a 10.4-inch VGA TFT from Sharp cost $2,500 only in price. It's changed a bit since then. Smartphones and tablets were the last big volume here. But another way to look at it is you can see that notebooks came in at these sizes, monitors came in at these sizes, TV came in this size. And you had mobile phones back in the day before the smartphone. But in this small space, there was actually quite a big gap in the market. And you can argue that, in fact, Apple really exploited that gap with smartphones, tablets, phablets, and then wearables. So we've now got flat panel displays pretty well from nothing up until whatever you like. And it's quite possible that the first volume application for micro LEDs might be TVs bigger than 100-inch, because there really isn't anything that's good as a TV bigger than 100-inch. So, you know, if you want 100 to 200-inch TV, micro LEDs is a pretty good way of doing it. But one of the things that's really been important for LCD is that LCD can do all of that. You can do tiny ones, you can do big ones, up to about 100-inch. So that's what's made the LCD so dominant. And I've got a slide I've been showing in variations for about 15 years called the LCD Monster. And the LCD Monster basically has everything, you know, whether it's TVs, monitors, notebooks, tablets, smartphones, still, digital still cameras, camcorders, automotive, that's a huge one, public displays. You can do it all with LCD. And LCD just killed everything. And I did a quick calculation, and I won't quote an accuracy on that, but I reckon this year about 2.2 billion LCDs, that's nice high quality TFT LCDs, will be made and shipped and used in products this year. So it's really hard to compete with LCD because of the sheer scale of that. This is really my final point, and I think the real challenge, given that I don't think there are, apart from them getting really good depth and some of the mechanical issues, optical issues, from the display device point of view, I actually don't think there's a problem in getting absolutely phenomenally good display devices for immersive ear-to-eye applications over the next few years. Absolutely no problem. But there is a problem in the money, because if you look on the scale of this chart, it's millions of square meters. You know, the display guys like to think in terms of millions of square meters. LCD is the blue one, the dark blue one, and AMOLED is the smaller one. And OLEDs are only in smartphones, so you can see, well, and a few TVs, but not many TVs, really, only a million or two. So really, LCD totally dominates in terms of 250 million square meters this year. You know, OLED is 17 million square meters. And I thought, I wonder what that means for AR headsets. If we took VR headsets, how many do you need? And actually, 1 million VR headsets is around 11,000 square meters of display. And if you want to make if you want to use 1 million square meters of display, you need to make about 86 million VR headsets. Now, given that, it may be a bit tricky to fully get display makers to really get excited about making the kind of displays, which they could make if they chose to, for the reasons I said earlier. They can do this stuff. But how are you going to persuade them that a market that might be, 100,000 square meters of displays going to compete when they're really interested in 250, 300 million square meters? There's a real issue of scale here. It's an issue for many applications, but I think it's going to be a real question. So that was it.